It's time to begin our last panel of the day. The template is the same. We will have 5 speakers with questions addressed for all of them or for each individually. In this sense, I invite Danko Nikolic to join the panel. Thanks for the warm welcome. And Anil, Seth. So one of the speakers in these panels that hasn't been introduced is Larissa Albantakis, who's online from Edison. Larissa is an assistant professor of computational psychiatry and a computational neuroscientist. Her research investigates the connections between causation, complexity, consciousness, and cognition. She has been affiliated with the University of Wisconsin-Madison since 2012, where she collaborated with Giulio Tononi, the creator of integrated information theory. She's one of the mothers of integrated information theory, and established her own research group in 2022. Having been involved in consciousness science and its literature, she has developed the Consciousness Realist blog that serves as her endeavor to participate in the ongoing conversation about consciousness and its theories. Thank you, Larissa, for being here with us. Another speaker that I want to invite today is Idoia Ana Salazar. Professor Salazar is the founder and president. Please, Professor Idoia. Professor Salazar is the founder and president of the Observatory on the Social and Ethical Impact of Artificial Intelligence, or DISEA is the acronym. She's also an expert at the European Parliament Artificial Intelligence Observatory. She's currently collaborating with the Spanish government on setting up the Artificial Intelligence Regulation Sandbox and the official certification on AI in Spain. She holds a Ph.D. from the CU San Pablo University and specializes in artificial intelligence ethics and regulation. Author of 4 books on the societal effect of AI and cutting-edge technology, and she's also a founding member of the Springer magazine, AI and Ethics. Professor Salazar, thank you for being here with us. And last but not least, Romanian professor Dragoș Cârneci. The public's favorite, from what I can discern from there. Good. Professor Cârneci is a doctor in psychology, specializing in cognitive neuroscience. He has more than 25 years of academic experience. And in addition to serving as an associate professor at Spiru Haret University's Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences in Bucharest, he's also an associate at the University of Bucharest, Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences. Good. I think we are good to start, and now we need the questions, my dear friends from the organization team. Good. The first question will be for everyone in the panel. We will have roughly 20 minutes, so that makes 4 minutes per person, and we will begin with Larissa Albantakis, and here is the context of the question. There is growing concern at all societal levels, from the legislative branch to actual scientists that work in the development of AI, on how symbiotic our relationship with AI should be. The late 80s movies that describe the dark future of our existence, to science fiction novelists, to religious leaders, all describe the future that no longer exists without artificial intelligence. The name of the panel, which is AI and the Future of Mankind, while dramatic, wants to give a glimpse of how the world should look like with AI in it and what we should expect for the future of humanity. Transhumanism, as a concept, is living its birth into reality. Therefore, the question is, and for Larissa, what are the risks and implications of creating conscious machines, including their impact on human values and potential suffering, and what are the societal implications of AI advancements in consciousness? Should we be concerned about them?
Okay.
I don't know, I think Larissa is the first one.
Yes, so I start quietly. Can you hear me, or am I too loud? Or
I think we hear you well.
very good. So thank you for the question, and also thank you for having me on the panel, even though I couldn't be there in person. But so maybe the first thing to say about conscious artificial intelligence is that we should really think very hard why we would even want to have anything like that. I personally don't think we should actively try to do that, rather completely try to avoid having conscious machines, because I do not think that consciousness will come with any functional advantage. So my view on this is, of course, primarily inspired by IIT, by the integrated information theory, and their function and consciousness are very much dissociable, right? So whether a system, artificial or biological, depends on how it is built, how it is implemented exactly, and its underlying physical properties, and it does not depend on what it does. So just because we want smart machines that help us, there's no need to put consciousness into those machines, and we should try to avoid that. So because of this, I think we have very good reasons to think that we are not anywhere close at the moment to creating conscious machines. And so in a way, my biggest worry around AI is that people will wrongly assume some kind of behavioral attitude and start ascribing consciousness to artificial systems if they're just intelligent or creative enough to look almost human-like or far beyond human-like, actually. So, well, I think it's very important to clarify, the issue of artificial consciousness. I think the real pressing social issues regarding AI, and even, are really societal issues about how much power we want to give them, whether they're conscious or not. And that's true even if we would all agree that current and near future AI systems are not actually conscious.
We now move to Professor Salazar, please.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to thank the organization for inviting me. Thank you so much, especially to Florin and Luana. I totally agree with Clarissa. I think that the first thing that we have to think about is what is really artificial intelligence created for. Okay, we created artificial intelligence to deal with the big amount of data that we have around us. It's a tool that helps us to deal with all the data, all the big data that all of us generate like every day. That is the real use of artificial intelligence, and we really, it is a must nowadays to use that technology to pursue that specific thing. But it is a fact also that we have into our head like many producers of maybe science fiction movies and science fiction literature. And there is another field of investigation in artificial intelligence towards this consciousness, this artificial consciousness, and the possibility to even create artificial feelings into the machines. And nowadays, there is a sentence that I consider that is like a principle that is very important to follow. The thing is not if we can really do a specific thing with the technology itself, but the thing is if we really should go and do that. It's not a matter of maybe creating the real possibility of creating conscious machines. Maybe it could be possible in the future. Maybe it would be possible to create like feelings, what we consider feelings, into a machine. But the thing is, if this is really useful for humanity, if really we should investigate that way and finally get this consciousness into a robot. Is this going to help humanity? Is this going to help us to, I don't know, make our life better? I think this is a question, and I really agree with what Clarissa was saying. Thank you.
Thank you. We go now to Professor Carnage, please. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
It goes.
Okay. First of all, I have to thank Florin for inviting me here. I'm a neuroscientist, so I will speak from a psychological and biological point of view about artificial intelligence. First of all, we shall define the term intelligence, because it is not a well-defined term. Even in psychology, it is considered an umbrella concept. It is not very well defined. And it is also an old concept. It's from the previous century. Actually, in the last decade, tends to be replaced by executive functioning or some components of the executive functioning. So it is a vague term, but doesn't matter, because also in the technology field, this term covered a lot of different things. It's not a single thing, it's very different. We should remember that we built this machine intelligence, and we built this to serve our purpose and copying our image. But this is maybe just a step in the evolution of what it is called in philosophy intelligence, or in psychology intelligence. We create them, and maybe in the future they will be the next phase of intelligence, but evolving separately from us and creating their own images and serving their own purpose, a machine purpose, not a biological purpose. We don't know what is this purpose. And this doesn't mean necessarily that we will disappear as a species, because as we look in the past, as we evolved as a dominant species, other considered intelligent species didn't disappear. The apes didn't disappear, the dolphins, the raven, the octopus, they're considered intelligent, and they didn't disappear. Dinosaurs disappeared, but not because of us. So maybe this evolutionary path is not the end of humanity, it's just a different path. And we can co-evolve with these machines, maybe, I don't know, help each other. But I don't see this as a fatalist point of view, as the end of the civilization. Just, how to say it, a bigger civilization with multiple poles, or something like this. An artificial pole and a biological pole. I guess this is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We go to Danko next.
So, hi. So, I will have a little bit different opinion. So I'm not too worried about artificial intelligence producing problems. I'm worried, if I'm worried about something, it's about people who will have access to artificial intelligence and people intentionally producing problems. So AI on its own, I think we will have full control of what it can do and what its limits are and how far it can go. And it's our decision of how we want to build it. And someone may want to use it in a bad way, and that's possibly a danger. So we have to worry about humans and human control about some, like every other powerful technology. But then even if we are worrying about that, I think AI is low on the level of the list of dangers that we face as a society. And I don't think I need to remind you about nuclear weapons that we have. They're far more dangerous than AI. Like imagine you have like some really evil person with lots of resources, and this person wants to destroy the world. And what is easier, like to just build a bunch of nuclear bombs, or to build intelligent robots that are going to go around and kill people? It's clear that nuclear weapon is really, by far, much more dangerous. That's what we have to worry about as a society, I think, really. And we have to worry about people having control over it and how to make sure that we don't get nuked or that the world doesn't get nuked. And AI is really low. So after a nuclear weapon probably comes the global warming, then come the other well-known problems like the increasing separation between rich and poor in our societies. These are real problems. AI is somewhere down there, sitting not far away from safety of traffic, right? Making sure that cars have seat belts and ABS brakes and things like that. That's my opinion.
My microphone, it's a very creative one and unexpected. So, Anil, please, your take on the question.
Thank you. Is this working? The handheld. That's better. Thank you. It's working. Well, thanks for this opportunity, and thanks to the other panelists, and nice to see you, Larissa. I agree with bits of what everybody has said. So, I agree here with Danko that part of the problem is not artificial intelligence, it's real stupidity or bad actors. I agree with Larissa very strongly that we should not be actively trying to build conscious machines just because it's cool, which is, the tech industry seems to be somewhat driven by, hey, we'll do it because we can, and then we'll see what use is made of. This is not the right policy for this kind of technology anymore. We must be much more thoughtful, should we, rather than could we. I agree with you as well. Many of the things that you were saying from a psychological perspective, especially that intelligence is not the same thing as consciousness. Often they're confused, and you don't get consciousness just in virtue of making something more intelligent. It's a bit of a human bias that we have to link the two very closely together. But just to return to the question specifically, the risks and implications of creating conscious machines and their impact on human values, I think there are two kinds of risks here, and I think it's really important to separate them. There are the long-term, sort of semi-existential risks, which you were talking about too, and of actually building machines that are conscious, that have feelings. This is hugely uncertain. We don't know what it would take to build a conscious machine. We also don't know how to guarantee that we won't build a conscious machine. Different theories make different predictions. If we were to do it, whether on purpose or by accident, it would be, I think, fairly catastrophic, partly because we would create things that had the potential to suffer. And there's this sentience principle. They would have moral status. We might not even recognize the suffering. And we would potentially introduce vast quantities of new suffering into the world. This would be an ethical disaster. And there might be a risk to us as well, because as soon as something is conscious, arguably it has its own interests and not only the interests that we give it. There's this issue in AI called the value alignment problem. How do we make sure that a system acts in the best interests of us or the planet? This is hard enough as it is. For artificial consciousness, it might get even harder. Those are the two of the long-term risks, but I think they're low or uncertain probability. The near-term risks have already been hinted at, are what happens, and Larissa, you mentioned this, what happens when we attribute consciousness to machines that aren't. We're already doing this with large language models. We saw Blake Lemoine do this at Google last year. It's with GPT-4. It's very compelling. This is going to be very problematic for society because if we assume that something is conscious when it isn't, we will make predictions and assumptions about how it might behave, which might be right 99% of the time, but will be wrong the 1% of the time that it matters. And it will also distort how we think and act ethically and morally. Either we end up caring about these large language models and therefore less caring about other things that we should care more about, or we somehow, as the science fiction series Westworld beautifully explored, we somehow have to learn to treat these systems as if they're not conscious, as if they are conscious. We have to treat them as if they are conscious, even though we know or suspect that they aren't. And there's an argument that goes right back to Kantian philosophy that this brutalizes our own minds. We become sort of sociopathic in this way, that we treat these systems in ways that you wouldn't treat a conscious human, even though they make us feel that they're conscious in a way that we can't get underneath because they're so compelling. And I think it's the reason why we don't dismember dolls on stage in front of children, right? There's nothing living or conscious about a doll, but to do it is to express a kind of behavior that makes us worse people by engaging in it. So that, I think, and these near-term dangers, I mean, they are, in a way, already here. So in summary, I think there are lots to worry about, but we mustn't confuse the uncertain long-term existential risks with the short-term, clear and present threats of machines that seem conscious even if they're not.
Thank you. We already had a very rich repertoire of answers to these questions, so let's go to the second one, which is addressed to Idoia Ana Salazar. In light of the transparency challenges and potential biases in AI tools, how can we effectively address the lack of explainability in AI decisions and mitigate the risk of inaccuracies, discriminatory outcomes, and embedded biases stemming from open source data? What initiatives or measurements are being undertaken to overcome these limitations, and to what extent have we progressed in implementing the necessary steps to address these concerns?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Yes, there is. It's clear that we start to think about the risk of consciousness on machines. That is clear, but there are another risks that are nowadays over our table. There are the use of that without consciousness, without machines with feelings. The AI is already in our lives, in our routine. That is not the future. We are living with AI in many of the different apps that we are using every day. Even if you use Amazon app or another, Netflix or another platform, audiovisual platform, you have like AI systems giving you recommendations, and maybe that is even unconscious. Being unconscious, it is like in some way influencing the way that you act, and you don't even know it. And there is a risk. It is a risk, and nowadays, as it was said in the previous panels, there are plenty of companies that have seen on AI like a lot of money. So there are many companies all around the world that are already investing big amounts of money in this technology. So it is a fact that in a while, all of us are going to be living in our routine with some way, with some service or product with artificial intelligence. The thing is that society is not really ready for the big impact of this technology. That's why you know that in Europe we are like very aware of the impact technologies, the negative impact of maybe big technologies like the internet, like social networks, and nowadays like the main institutions in Europe, like for example, the European Commission and European Parliament are very worried about how this big technology is going to be impacting our society. Artificial intelligence is not just for companies, it's for every one of us. There's like 3 elements that are very relevant for a technology to have like a great impact in society. And we saw that with ChatGPT. ChatGPT has the same as Google has in matters of, for example, it is very easy to use. It's like Google. You can communicate with ChatGPT in natural language. It's like so easy. You don't need to learn anything or do any course really to interact in a basic use with ChatGPT. There is another very important thing, which is like very cheap. It is cheap. I mean, it's for free. You can access to a better version with paying a small amount of money, but it's free for everyone to access to that technology. And there is another thing, the last thing that is very useful, just as the many students, all the students of the schools and universities for them, and also for many companies are already using that technology. If you have that 3 elements, you have a deep impact technology in all of us. That means that artificial intelligence came here to stay. And it's not like a fashion thing that is going to stay. And because of that, as the previous thing that I said, really the European Union is very worried about our rights, our fundamental rights. They decided that it's not enough just to make soft law, really just ethical legislation, like to avoid like large companies to develop business models, just if they don't take care of, and do not, and prevent that they take care of maybe that the data is biased, that they do not have like a good human oversight and these kind of things when they develop or use the AI models. That's why they decided to make, apart from this soft law, ethics on AI, that they already have been talking in previous panels, they decided to make a legislation about that, the AI Act. The AI Act that is developing nowadays the European Commission, and also with the help of many countries and also with the help of the European Parliament, is trying to create, for one side, confidence in the whole Europeans. Really, they are like trying to create a law for everybody, for every company that really develop high-risk AI systems. And they are doing it, I think, in a very good way, because they are basing all the strategy for making this law on the risk of the AI system, not in the technology itself, because they consider, and I said previously also, that it's a must to use nowadays AI to deal with the big amount of data that we have like all around us. It is a must to use the technology. So I don't want to stop. They don't want to stop using that the different companies around the world, and in Europe specifically, use this technology. But they want that everybody do it in a safe way. So that's why they developed this legislation. They are developing this legislation based on risk, and it is a kind of, they put like a kind of traffic lights. They put like a red one, that means that it's forbidden, totally forbidden to do something, for example, I give just some examples of it. For example, use a system for social scoring, like for example, of public administration, for example, in China. Another thing, for example, is forbidden to put cameras, like real-time cameras in public spaces to look around and see if someone of us is doing something bad or whatever. That is forbidden also. It is forbidden to install, for example, AI systems in a company or in a school to see, to catch emotions of people. That is forbidden. Okay, there is specific things that they consider that really is bad for our for our fundamental rights, and that things would be not possible to use, okay, or develop. And they have another like traffic light, with its the orange one, that is the one in which is based almost the whole legislation. This orange one is the high risk systems. Okay, these high-risk systems are those that are impact straight in some way in our fundamental rights. For example, use an AI system in a company, so I can get into that company to work or not. Okay, that would be, if you do that, you will have to follow specific measures. For example, you have to take very care of data. You have also to have human oversight. You have to register your model into a public database. You have to have like a post-marketing monitoring. And you have to like do several things if you really want to run that model and into your product. I cannot extend myself very much, but just to tell you, if the companies do not follow these rules, they will have to face like big fines. So they should really, after the legislation, is very important that they do this. And then after that, we have like a yellow traffic light, just for those algorithms, for the AI algorithms that are just, for example, I give you an example, so it's easy to understand, for example, the deepfakes, in which we interact with an algorithm, like we see a video, that has been modified with artificial intelligence. So after this legislation, it would be a need to write underneath that has been done with an AI system. Or for example, a news written by an AI system has to say, for example, it has been done automatically, or with an AI system, something like that. And then finally, we have the green one. That means that there is no need of any regulation towards that AI system. For example, those systems used for spam, filters of spam, or for example, just automation or something like that. So as you see, it's like, I think it's like a pretty good approach to the legislation. Just to tell you something about that, and I finish with this, I really think that in the government, like the European Commission is trying hard to protect all of our rights with this, and it's a good approach. But there are plenty of companies that really see in this legislation like a stop to the development of their products. So, but in Spain, what we are doing is like a help for this, and we are developing a sandbox, regulatory sandbox, in which we will be experimenting with different companies that in Spain are nowadays developing or using AI systems. In order to, we develop also a specific guidelines for technicians, very technical, very good, and very easy to understand guidelines. So if, for example, if a startup get that guidelines, it would be so easy for them to really to pass all the requirements of that legislation. So as you see, really there are plenty of things nowadays being done in the whole world, and specifically in Europe, in order to avoid bad approaches to the risk of the AI systems.
Thank you very much, Professor Salazar, for this legal bent to our discussion. At least I can speak for myself. I benefited greatly from it. I didn't know these light systems. It was really informing. We now switch to a more theoretical question. We'll start with Larissa, then Anil, and then Dragos. And the question is this: are there limitations to our current scientific methodologies and approaches when it comes to studying consciousness? And how might AI assist in overcoming these limitations? Can AI contribute to developing novel frameworks or paradigms for exploring and understanding consciousness? Larissa?
Yes, I think that there will be an impact, a big impact of these AI systems on our approaches to consciousness. And I mean, the role they already played is that they took some of what has been like abstract thought experiment and made the debates around consciousness very real, right? Because some scenarios that were abstract in the past, now we have, this artificial system that is very intelligent. And I'm thinking, for example, about the Chinese room experiment, for those who know, or generally just the need to distinguish functionalist approaches with more general physicalist approaches to explaining consciousness. Another interesting issue that has come up is a renewed debate about the testability and the applicability of various models of consciousness. So one thing that recently has become very clear is that just identifying the neural correlates of consciousness within our human brain is not really getting us to a point where we can answer questions about other systems like artificial intelligences, right? Because they are very different from us. So it's not clear that the same correlates should apply or will answer our questions, just whether this particular system could in principle be conscious or not. And instead, it's really important to realize that everyone who provides an opinion on the issue of AI consciousness implicitly has to have like a model of consciousness in mind. And it's very important that in the debate, those implicit assumptions are made explicit. So in other words, nobody is really theory free when it comes to consciousness. Everyone has their own ideas around the topic that very much influence their statements and opinions. And we have to be clear about this underlying assumption in order to have a productive debate. And I think another thing that has come up is that the whole AI debate has led some to realize, maybe for the first time, that there really is no theory-independent way to evaluate consciousness in systems that are very different from us. So you cannot independently measure or like verify a prediction from any given theory about an artificial system. So let's say IIT says that these systems are not conscious, right? How do I ever prove or disprove that? And the answer is that I cannot prove or disprove that in the artificial systems themselves, right? So importantly, it does not mean that we cannot compare the validity of different theories or that these theories are untestable in principle. They are very much testable, but they're not testable on those individual, like any individual artificial system that we want to investigate. So nothing gets decided in a single experiment. And again, we have to be very clear about our underlying assumptions when we make statements about the possibility or actuality of AI consciousness.
Thank you. Anil?
Thanks, Larissa. Are we go? Yes, we're good. Thank you. Thank you, Larissa. That was, again, a lot to agree with that, especially that there is indeed no theory-independent way of generalizing inferences about where consciousness is in the world beyond humans, unless we have, without making some assumptions about the theory. And different theories, of course, make very different predictions, which is part of the problem. Integrated information theory will say something very different than sort of my own ideas about predictive processing and living systems. So I think one of the first things is the rise of at least the possibility means there's an even more impetus to fund research into consciousness so that we understand it better in those cases where we know it exists, so that we can be less in the dark when we're making claims about uncertain situations like AI. Limitations and how it might benefit. So there are many limitations that we have in studying consciousness. One of them is interesting. One of them is we make assumptions we don't even know we're making about the nature of the phenomenon, like what it correlates with. And here, as Larissa was saying, that AI has already instantiated some of our thought experiments in an interesting way. It also might give rise to new thought experiments and ideas. One thing that struck me is that it might make sense to say that, for instance, a large language model, a future one, actually really understands stuff, but is not conscious. Whereas I think previously we've always tended to associate understanding, true understanding, with a kind of conscious appreciation of that which is understood. Now, I don't think current large language models understand anything, but future ones may do that. So we might introduce a new conceptual distinction that we didn't have before, thanks to AI. There are other ways that AI can help. One of them, Larissa briefly mentioned, that the standard method in neuroscientific method in consciousness research is to look for correlates between what's happening in the brain and what's happening in experience. And correlations, as we all know, are limited. They don't explain anything. They're just correlations. They're useful, but they don't do that much. To move from correlation towards explanation, we need models. And AI can do this. It already has in many ways. Because most of the AI models of the sort we're talking about are loosely based on how brains work. So people have already used AI models to understand more about the visual system and what aspects of the visual system are associated with conscious versus unconscious perception. So I think AI can be very useful there. And a final way it can be useful, and here's where I think I slightly disagree with a thing Larissa said in the first response, which is its relation to function. I think in humans, at least, consciousness is highly functional. It allows us to do things that we are very bad at unconsciously. This is different from saying it's tied together in general, but certainly I think in the examples we have, consciousness is very functional. It allows us to integrate a lot of information in ways that are kind of body and goal-centered. And it's an interesting observation. This is something I was discussing with people in AI like Yoshua Bengio and so on over recent years, that the sorts of things that AI is still not very good at, even large language models, the sort of things they're not very good at are the sort of things that we associate with being conscious, apart from speaking now, interestingly. The ability to generalize very quickly to novel situations. We learn to drive in Bucharest. We can learn to drive in Tokyo. It's hard, but we can do it. Don't have to retrain the whole thing. We know when we're right or wrong. We have an insight into the validity of our We have this thing, metacognition. We know about our beliefs. And we can integrate information from lots of different modalities, sensory channels together. These are the kinds of things that current AI is not great at. And so figuring out how to, there's a nice synergy here. We can maybe make AI more useful without making it conscious by understanding more about how we do the things that we do in virtue of being conscious. So I think that there is a useful synergy, but to return to the first thing, we mustn't slip into the use of AI to understand consciousness better or to make more useful AI with the goal of building a conscious machine. And of course, where that line is, very hard to know because it depends on your theory.
For sure. Thank you, Anil. Dragos?
Okay. First of all, consciousness is rather an exception in the brain functioning. Brain is functioning mostly unconsciously, and this is the best thing it does, because it is faster, it's more accurate, it's more efficient. So here arises the question, why do we need conscious processes? Do we really need it? Actually, it is known in neuroscience that consciousness or conscious processes appear in all the large networks of the brain, or what is called large-scale networks. It's not something specific to one part of the brain. All of these brain networks are working also consciously, especially the cortical part of the networks above the thalamus. But here comes the interesting part, because a recent discovery revealed that all these major brain networks initially is possible to have a different function. They have the function to regulate the body functioning. It has this function in animals and still have it in humans. Not only subcortical centers, but all the neocortical networks are regulating our body. Motor system, cardiovascular system, breathing, gastrointestinal system, immunity, metabolism. All of these are regulated by the same brain networks, which generates conscious thoughts, which generates cognition, or what we call cognition. So it is a very interesting link, this one, because it appears that these networks involving conscious processing, it also makes what is called an allostatic regulation of the body. What is allostatic regulation or allostasis? I'm sure you are familiar with the concept, because partially Anil says something about in his presentation today. It seems that the brain evolves not to be rational, but for trying to predict or guess the future. It uses our stored past experiences in order to generate scenarios, probability scenarios about what it is in the future, in order to prepare us for that future. And prepare not just cognitively, but especially as an organism, especially metabolic preparation. And this is called predictive coding or predictive processing. It's a debate about the term. I will not go into this because Anil already presented about this term, but it is a theory which is gaining more and more traction in neuroscience, because it explains a lot of things, or seems to explain a lot of things, from perception to action. And from this point of view, I will go beyond and say that these beliefs, our beliefs, conscious beliefs, seems to have different roles. They have the role to explain our past and to build our future, but also have a very important role in regulating our body. These beliefs are adding a new layer or a new level of regulating our body through conscious cognitions. And it seems that our metabolism is not dictated only by what we eat, but also by what we think about. And our immune response is not regulated only by bacteria and viruses, but also by our positive and negative expectations or anticipations. So I think this is, in my opinion, a possible role for the artificial intelligence, especially machine learning. It can provide us a lot of data about the connections between the large network in the brain and their allostatic role in the body, because this can assure us a new way of controlling the body, optimize the body's function, repair the body's functions, fight with inflammation, and also probably, I don't know, delay aging in the future. And I guess this could be an important role of artificial intelligence, especially machine learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Krnec. We will now change the question, and I think this question you just addressed now. It's interesting how you gave an answer to two questions without knowing the question. I think you already gave an answer to the question, and the question is, how can the integration of AI and consciousness inform and enhance methods of research for drug discovery, clinical trials, and the development of new treatments? What role can AI play in accelerating the discovery and evaluation of potential therapeutics, optimizing the drug development pipeline, and facilitating a deeper understanding of consciousness in the context of healthcare research? If you want to comment briefly on this.
It's connected to
exactly
my last response. How to say it? Traditionally, when we talk about emotion is something related with consciousness. All the emotions are conscious. Traditionally, we have seen emotions as three aspects: a cognitive one, a behavioral one, and a physiological one. You know, physiological like breathing and heart rate and galvanic skin response, something like this. And all of these three aspects used to be the best descriptors of an emotion. But actually they are not. Because many studies in the last decade shown that only about 27, 28 of the variance is covered by all three. And usually the cognition is separate from the other two. So what does it mean? You can have a lot of physiological symptoms and don't feel any emotion. The latest theory in neuroscience about emotions, it is called the constructive theory of emotions. So emotions are not innate, are not hardwired in our brain, in some dedicated emotion systems in the brain. The brain doesn't any emotion system. Emotions are some constructions inside the brain. Of course, initially it starts with a general effect, pleasant and unpleasant from the body, from interoception. And depending on our culture, our parenting, the language we use, we construct, in the context, always linked with a context, we construct an image labeled with a word and say, I'm happy, or I'm disgusted, or I'm sad, or something like this. It's just a construction of the brain, similar with thoughts, imagination, planning, decision, something like this. A conscious construction. But it is very important. Why? Because this construction, called emotion, it's the only or the main reason people seek help when they are depressed or anxious or something like this. Very rare they go to the psychologist because they have physiological symptoms. They go to the doctor for this, not for the psychologist. So this construction called emotion is the main reason of distress. No? Distress is something conscious in the brain. So it is very important for us to know how the brain constructs these emotions in different culture and different genders and different ages. And maybe at this process, artificial intelligence can help us. Because there are a lot of data on the internet, raw data, and they can feed the machine learning, and machine learning can find the pattern and tell us where, when, why, eventually this process goes in the brain like this, and appear an emotion. A conscious state we call emotion, but it is always linked with our body and the context around us. And I think this is, for my opinion, the main utility of artificial intelligence in the study of a conscious state like emotion. Thank you.
Thank you. Danko?
Right, so, hello? Is it? So I would like to comment on this question a little bit from a different perspective, so that we see some other ideas. And what I would like to begin with is to give you the idea that you could have different type of intelligences, and each type of intelligence is good for some type of problems, and is at the same time bad for other type of problems. So just to give you some examples, we humans are great at doing some things, and we're really pretty bad in doing some other things. And they're like multiplication. We can multiply, but there's a little machine, little small microchip that can multiply much better than we can. ChatGPT is good at some things. It can also multiply, but it's not as good as this little small cheap microchip. It makes mistakes and consumes lots of energy, and so we humans make mistakes, and also we consume lots of energy. So there's always pros and contras. Now, when you're looking to help for drug discovery, for finding, let's say you want to find a molecule that solves some health issue. You would, ideally what you want to do before you do experiments on humans, you would like to somehow have a very good guess that this has a good chances of helping. And how are you going to do it? You have to somehow think it through if you don't do the experiments. You have to use the existing knowledge, you have to somehow simulate that world and so on. And my point is that for such efforts, we will need AI, we will need a heavy computation, but of a very different nature than what we need, let's say, for a robot that we need at home to take care of our home. These are completely different problems for completely different AI approaches, for completely different architectures, algorithms, if you will, whatever. So the question stays like, will consciousness help here? Maybe, but possibly not. Possibly other types of AI algorithms would help much more than, say, an algorithm that's, say, conscious. We don't know if we are going to ever have it. We don't know if it's okay to have it. But let's say we have something that's very similar to human. So this thing is going to think similar to human scientists. And the human scientist actually doesn't need another human-like help. It has already himself and the whole lab of students, and they cannot figure it out. So better to have some other approach, some other machine. So I think AI of different type would be used for different type of problems, and a conscious-like AI we would use for human-like problems. And those things that are really hard for humans, we need something else than human-like AI. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question for Idoia Ana Salazar. What are the ethical, safety, and societal challenges associated with the emergence of conscious AI? How do these challenges differ for those posed by non-conscious AI systems? And hopefully you'll have the same legal bent to your answer.
I will not repeat it again. Okay, I really think that would depend on, or I really hope that we don't get to that point in which we have that really conscious AI in the terms, I mean, I hope maybe in the future we will have that conscious AI, but I hope that we will use it as a tool to help humans in some specific things, that consciousness. The same thing as maybe we are going to be using that specific machines with feelings in order to help maybe old people, you know, to interact with these people in some way, in the way that would be useful for humans. So depends on what are we going to be doing today, that challenges. I like it very much what you said about the cultural approach when talking about these big social challenges, because as I told you, maybe we are not going to get to this point specifically in Europe because we are taking a lot of care about this. I'm just thinking about the European people in the European Parliament that are getting crazy with the very soft AI that we have nowadays. If we start talking about the conscious machines, they are going to be even crazier. Like, so imagine we are thinking about this consciousness, about maybe we have to start to talk about rights for robots, maybe in the future. If we have AI systems that are conscious, maybe they will be starting to have responsibilities, and maybe we have to start about thinking on giving rights to these robots. There are plenty of people around the world that are lawyers that are thinking about these rights for robots. I don't agree at all because we still have to get a lot of rights for humans. But still, there is a fact that in some places in the world are already thinking very hard into this possibility of making robots in like the same of us, like making artificial humans, for example. In this sense, for example, just talking about this cultural approach, this is a big social challenge. Imagine people in Asia, some places in Asia that are nowadays like getting married with a robot, for example. They are doing it. Like they are like, and not just one, but more than 3,000 people that are being married with a specific like holograph that is called Hatsune Miku. And I don't know if you have heard about her, but it is like an AI system capable of, you know, answering in natural language to the owner. And for that, people is so great for the people that are getting married with that hologram because they never agree. I mean, they all the time agree with the husband, and all the time they're so happy with it, never discuss anything. So the thing is that if we change this into Europe, we see it like impossible. For example, it's very important, the cultural approach, and I think the social challenges that we might have here in Europe are quite different from the ones that maybe are going to happen in the United States or in Asia, for example. How to approach these social challenges? I think it is very important, the education. I think that all of us have the right to know what it really is an AI system, and all of us have the right to know that even if an AI system is going to give you a recommendation or something, I mean, you are the one that have finally to decide to do it or not. It is a consciousness. Talking about being conscious, it is the time in which we have to make more conscious to regular people of what can we really do with AI and what we cannot do with AI, or what are the possibilities of AI. It is something related also with consciousness that we have to really like give to the general public, giving them education about that. They really needed to know the real thing and to take out all the prejudices from their head. And once we have done that, maybe we will have like the good field in which we can keep growing in a good way these AI systems.
Thank you. The next question for Larissa. With the advancements in quantum computing and artificial intelligence, how close are we to the development of an AI that can operate on quantum principles? And mostly, something that I would be interested in asking you about is, what's the relation between quantum weirdness or indeterminacy and the way IIT puts it, especially in this fourth axiom of consciousness being determinate? And I know you have worked on implementing the IIT formalism in quantum systems. So please, can you comment on that?
Yeah, so maybe I should put out as a warning, though, that I'm not someone who's actively working on quantum computing itself, but as far as I am involved, or I have researched that topic, it's so now and probably for a long time out, quantum computers are not so much of interest for their practical value, but rather for simulating specific quantum phenomena. So in other words, as far as I can tell, quantum computers have a value for research in physics and in theoretical computer science, but less so for creating artificial intelligence at the moment. And the reason for that is performing large computations with a quantum computer is hard, and it's hard for the same reason that it is unlikely that quantum processes play a significant role in our macro level processes that in the brain that underlie our thoughts and our perceptions. So quantum phenomena are just not very stable, and especially not in the physical environment in which our brain lives, which is body temperature and being a macroscopic system. So my own interest in connecting with consciousness with quantum mechanics has more to do with the question of supervenience and the fact that at some microscopic description, the brain is a quantum system, and there is information processing also at that microscopic level of description. So this leaves us with the questions, with some why questions. Why do we seem to experience interactions of our neurons or groups of neurons? So why do our experience seem to correlate with those macroscopic units in our brain rather than with the interactions of atoms or molecules in the brain? So somehow it doesn't seem like what a molecule in our brain does makes much of a difference to our experience, but even a single neuron could possibly alter our experience in some way or another, perceptually even, right? So this is a question when we want to ask what consciousness fundamentally is about, right? And so again, if you bring in integrated information theory, the answer would be it is about the causal interactions of your physical system that you're describing, like how do all the parts of the system interact, and importantly in the brain it seems to be macroscopic parts, right? And we have to find some explanation for why the macroscopic parts that don't necessarily rely on the microscopic quantum mechanical description seem to matter, right? And one answer is that the prediction that comes from IIT is to say that at the level of neurons, our brain is just much more informative and integrated than at the level of those quantum interactions. But in order to test that or to provide an answer for that, we have to be able to apply our theory both to the microscopic description and also to the macroscopic description. And so importantly then, this approach does not mean that IIT is a quantum theory of consciousness, or that it ascribes any particular magical powers almost to quantum effects. And we do not expect there to be, we actually should not expect there to be any advantage of quantum systems with respect to consciousness, because that is not, or most likely not, part of the one conscious system that we know of, which is human beings and their underlying substrate. Right? So in that sense, I am skeptical about what quantum systems can provide with respect to consciousness.
Thank you, Larissa. We now go to Anil. And the question is, how do anthropocentric and anthropomorphic biases influence our perception of AI systems? Can we accurately attribute consciousness to AI based on their behavior or dialogue patterns, as we see with ChatGPT?
Thanks. I'll try to keep this short in the interest of time, because we've covered a little bit before. But I think, as human beings, we oscillate a little bit between our anthropocentric tendencies and our anthropomorphic tendencies. Anthropocentrism is the tendency to view the world sort of through the lens of being human. We think we're special, we think we're the top of every pyramid, and so we interpret things with that assumption implicitly held, which is why we're more likely to feel ethical considerations for, let's say, a primate than for a snail. There's other reasons, but a lot of it is because they seem more similar to us. And we also think special, so we attribute things like...
I think the mic is...
That's all right, I've got one. Hey, I've got a spare, look at that. Come prepared. Is this... Okay, so... Yes, anthropocentrism is also why we take things like language to be particularly compelling when we see it in an artificial system, because we have language and we think that's great, that's really important. But then on the other hand, we have anthropomorphism, which is the tendency to project human qualities into other things. And we do this very readily. Right? So if something is superficially similar, we will think, oh no, it has the thing that we have. So we think large language models understand, because if we were to utter the same things, we would understand. But that inference does not follow. It's not a sound inference. So there are these two biases that crop up. I mean, they really crop up when we think about non-human animals, that sometimes we're anthropocentric and we sort of deny consciousness to others on the basis they're insufficiently similar. Sometimes we project consciousness into them because we think, yeah, they are kind of sufficiently similar. So these are biases that we have, and there's plenty of evidence that they affect our judgments in all sorts of ways, and in ways that we don't necessarily have any either insight into or control over. So to answer the question, we certainly cannot attribute consciousness to AI based on their behavior or dialogue patterns, because they could be implemented in very different ways. Things like dialogue are what in philosophy you would say multiply realizable. And this has been one of the surprises, that chatbots can already engage in fluent language, and they do it in a very different way than we do, by being trained on basically everything that's ever been written, which is not how we learn stuff at all. So it is very misleading to do so, but I think we cannot help doing so, and that's the real problem, which is, again, is a reason why theory is critical. When we make these attributions, instead of just being led by these unreliable guides of our anthropomorphic and anthropocentric biases, we need to base our inferences on something sounder. And at the moment, there's no fully sound way to do it, but it depends on the theory that we have, and it depends on seeing empirically how far we can take what we know is important for consciousness in humans, and seeing whether the same things are there in AI. Of course, what the same things are depends on your theory.
For sure. Thank you, Anil. A brief reminder for those of you here, tomorrow at Cărturești Carousel, Anil will present his new book and its translation in Romanian, and it's at 5 p.m.
Yeah, 5 p.m. at Cărturești Carousel.
Yeah, Cărturești Carousel. See, yes, living in all countries now. Great.
I've been there already. It's a beautiful bookshop.
It is superb. And now we proceed to the next question. It's the final question, and I'll ask you to be briefer than 3 minutes and a half. And for all the panelists, and we will start with Larissa, what are some potential scenarios for the coexistence of AI and human consciousness? And how might AI and human consciousness interact and influence each other in the future? If possible, 2 minutes or less. Good. Larissa?
Yes, I'll be brief. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I think we should largely avoid to try to create AI consciousness. And on that, and I also actually don't think that will be very hard, because we're still far away. So as Anil put it earlier, it's one of those very long-term issues and what we should focus on are the more pressing current issues that already presented themselves to us. So we must be very careful about whether our future is one where we use AI to our general advantage to let humans and other living beings flourish, or whether we let humans and other living systems, which are the only conscious intelligent beings we know of in our universe, be replaced by artificial systems that, for all we know, don't even really exist in the sense that there's nothing it feels like to be those systems. And also, to reiterate what Anil just said and I mentioned at the beginning, we should be very careful about judging by behavior, right? Like, we don't know. We have to investigate, to make progress on our theories of consciousness. But until then, we should be very skeptical about AI consciousness.
Thank you. Idoia?
Okay, I totally, yes, hello? Hello, yes. Okay, I totally agree. As I said also in the previously, it is very important to focus nowadays in the real risk that we have nowadays, that we have plenty of them, and we should focus on that. But this is the interaction between AI and humans is being done already. You know, many of us, many kids already interact with these chatbots at home, like, for example, Alexa, Google Home, or this, and they interact, as you said, in natural language. They feel like they are like part, like a friend or something that is able to communicate with them, with these kids, in a way that they feel that this machine is able to understand what they are saying. And it's very important to make them realize what is really this chatbot and what is the good way for them to interact with this chatbot. It's not just a machine that is going to tell them how to do their homework, but, for example, in my case, my daughter was asking Alexa, for example, if she wanted to be her friend, you know, or something like that. I don't think that is just a thing of my daughter. You know, it's very important to tell companies that they should specifically take care of the ethics when they are making their machines. That they be very careful about the way these machines are going to be interacting right now with the kids, with the different people that are going to be asking them in natural language different things. You know, now the adults, we know we have ethics. We know if, for example, a friend of us tell us something that we don't like, so it's okay. Maybe we have the critical thinking of saying, okay, I'm not going to, for me, it's anything what you just said. But imagine a kid that has, like, many of them are maybe alone at home. Sometimes they interact with the machines. These machines that I'm talking about now the machines, but I'm talking about the companies that are towards that machines. If these companies do not take care of putting these ethics into the machine, technically, so maybe we are going to have a problem nowadays with this interaction with artificial intelligence. That is why this is something of the future, but it's something that we already have to start thinking about in order to avoid that we are going to start right now having a bad consequences with the interaction between machines and humans.
Thank you, Idoia. Dragos?
Okay. As Anil said earlier, there is a big difference between intelligence and consciousness. It's not the same thing. And maybe you're familiar with the situation when you are aware, you are conscious, and don't behave in a manner which could be considered intelligent in any way. But this evolution of artificial intelligence maybe could force us to evolve also. Because if we don't evolve in the future, we will not have any jobs, or many of us will not have any jobs. Maybe you have to evolve towards be more creative and more heuristically, not algorithmically. Because much of the jobs today are very routine, are algorithms. And this job is perfect for a computer, for a machine. And these jobs will be replaced first by machines. So maybe this is a brighter future for humanity, to evolve in something different, in something more creative, more heuristic, more open to discover and learn new things in a new way, not like in the present way. It's a chance for evolution, to co-evolve with artificial intelligence.
Thank you,
Minutes.
Perfect. Danko?
Okay. Hello? Yep. So here's the scenario. Imagine a situation in the future. We find out that autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, are safer if we give them a little bit of consciousness. Let's say we have to give them a little bit of controlled hallucinations. And this turns out to be really great, because when in a traffic new situation appears that never has appeared before, I don't know why, there's a truck coming in on one side and a bird on the other side and then flowing balloon, never been in a training data set before. So how are you going to solve that in order to not to crash the car? So some consciousness may be really good, some hallucination control with this and exploring the space of possibilities and finding the right solution. I turn left, accelerate a little bit, then turn right and slow down, and I avoided everything, everybody's safe. We prove that, then we have a problem. Are we gonna make the cars conscious? A little bit conscious, just that much, just conscious about this kind of stuff, nothing else. No emotions, nothing like that, just conscious about this stuff. And now also the regulators are going to be like, what do we do? I mean, that's clearly safer. So maybe let's go for it. And once we are there, then there is like an open road to go further. And I think that's actually going to happen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Danko. Anil?
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm waiting. Hello? Hello. Is this working? Yes, great, thank you. Yeah, I think I'll try and finish on a bit of an optimistic note, really. I mean, we've heard a bit of optimism in this wonderful discussion. And firstly, just on your point, it's a very interesting scenario, but it really begs the question whether you could build that functionality into a self-driving car without endowing it with consciousness. Just because we do that, because we're conscious, doesn't mean that that's the only way of doing it. But it's a good scenario. Now, in this general question, potential scenarios for coexistence of AI and human consciousness, I'm not talking about coexistence of artificial consciousness and human consciousness, but how will we live in a world where AI is certainly very smart? And I think here I'm always reminded of words by a mentor of mine, Daniel Dennett, a philosopher, who said we should always remember about artificial intelligence that we are building tools and not colleagues, and be mindful of the difference. And I think that's true now more than ever. And it really suggests why we have to resist this anthropomorphic tendency to think we're interacting with colleagues or children or other people, fake people, rather than tools. Another philosopher, colleague of mine, Andy Clark, has talked a lot about the extended mind. This is the idea that the limits of our mind are not at the skull. They're in our bodies, they're in environments, they're certainly in my phone. My memory is in my phone, a large part of it. Our mind extends into the technologies we use. If you put these two together, what we mean is our mind, it's not that we're interacting with other minds, our minds become enhanced through interaction, extended through AI technologies. And there are many ways in which this could be beneficial to us. I think you've mentioned a couple. For instance, we have so many flawed biases. We're terrible at long-term thinking. We are terrible at estimating probabilities. These are biases that evolution has written into our wetware that we cannot overcome easily. We can design systems that can compensate for these biases and help us deal with things like climate change, pandemics, nuclear brinksmanship in ways that we find as a society very difficult. The last thing, just a general picture for how this might look, is another sort of colleague and inspiration of mine, Yoshua Bengio again. He has this idea that maybe we should think of AI in the future as a bit like an oracle. There's a large space of possible minds that we might design, or mind tools. And an oracle, I like to think of, and he suggests, is a kind of entity that gives us good advice. It doesn't have its own goals. It doesn't have its own interests. It has no agency. It's there to consult, and it gives us good advice. I think that, for me, is a very kind of benign and hopeful scenario about how in the future we might interact and coexist along with AI. Oh, so he's saying, he's messing with me because he's watched Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and if we consult this and it says 42, what do? Well, let's hope it's a bit, even ChatGPT doesn't just say 42, so I think we'll be all right, but yes, we need to understand the answer. If it's very just like, give some weird phrase, then we might just develop a religion around it rather than use useful advice, so let's make sure it doesn't do that. Good point.
For sure. Thank you, Anil. And let's thank our speakers for this panel.